Guys, I want to thank the sponsors of the podcast. I want to thank GoHunt.com, my friend Cody Nelson, the glassing guru, the optics authority. He's the optics manager at GoHunt.com. If you have any interest in buying optics or have any glassing questions, whether it be tripods, spotting scopes, rifle scopes, range finders, anything to do with glassing, give Cody a call, 702-847-8747. That's extension 2, or you can email him at optics@gohunt.com. You can also send him a text or call him on his cell phone at 602-399-3699. Guys, right now at GoHunt.com Insider, you can take advantage of the free trial. Go to GoHunt.com/JScott. You're going to be able to take advantage of a free trial of the Insider. GoHunt is always adding more value for their Insider members. They've now added real 3D maps as a part of Insider for no additional cost. What an incredible value. Very soon they're going to have their mobile app up as well. Go to GoHunt.com/JScott and sign up for a free trial. If you're already an Insider member, it's automatically part of your Insider membership. And you can just go to the Maps tab up at the top once you sign in as an Insider. I also want to thank KUIU Ultralight Hunting. That's the gear that I wear on all of my hunts. To find out more, you can go to KUIU.com, KUIU.com. They're a direct-to-consumer company. They sell everything off of the KUIU.com website. I also do a lot of question and answer on my Instagram where I'm answering questions about guys wanting to know about gear about KUIU, so tune into my Instagram. I want to thank KUIU for their sponsorship. I also want to thank Phonescope.com. Use the JScott20 promo code. You're going to get a 10% discount on all orders. And I want to thank allelk.com, home of the Bugle Mule. Use the JSO10 to save 10% on all orders. The Bugle Mule attaches to your bugle, and it's a great little carrier that holds 3 elk calls right there on your bugle tube, and I can't wait to use it this season. Again, thanks to all the sponsors of my podcast. Guys, welcome to the podcast. I've got my friend Steve Chappell of Chappell Hunting Productions, Chappell Guide Service. Steve, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Jay. I'm really chomping at the bit to start elk season. It's getting really close, so I'm really excited this time of year.
You know, I've kind of been wetting my whistle, if you will, with the ElkCampTV shows, I believe, on the Sportsman's Channel. Tell me about how it's going.
Yeah, Jay, it's the 3rd season. Hard to believe that we're already into season 3. Been airing since late June. I think we're up to about episode 9 right now. So if guys have Sportsman Channel, they can catch it on Mondays at 1:30 Eastern Time or 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And yeah, just love doing it. The editing's a little bit of a grind and a little bit of a love-hate relationship, but I'm getting into the groove on that and loving it, and I'm looking forward to going out and filming for season 4. Hard to believe.
Yeah, you know, Steve, part of the magic of ElkCampTV for me and then all of your DVDs and Extreme Bulls videos that you used to do is that not only do you basically produce from a on-the-ground production during the hunt, trying to manage how the hunt's going and being filmed and what have you, but being able to edit that yourself, even though I know how much of a grind and time-consuming it is, you're able, as the editor as well, to pull out some of the emotion and draw out some of the things within the hunt, building suspense and stuff since you were there, where I feel like a lot of times in a lot of other shows, the editors weren't on the ground. They don't know how it was going, and so it's missing a little bit. Can you talk a little bit about being able to kind of, in essence, be a one-man band with the production of the show?
Yeah, Jay, that definitely is an advantage. I have a saying that every cameraman should have to edit.
Yeah.
Because that makes them a much better cameraman because they know what you need as an editor. But then that does help me, since I do edit the show, to be able to relate to my cameraman exactly what I need when we're out there. just to get all types of different shots. And we're running 2 cameras now in the field on the hunts, which, you get a lot of extra footage. It's always better to have more than not enough, for sure. It really seems overwhelming every time I start a new episode. It's kind of unbelievable. You're starting from scratch with a whole bunch of raw footage. And I just kind of have that writer's block for a little while. And I think, how am I going to get it from here to the finish line, if you know what I mean?
Right.
I've done it a lot now, but you still kind of have that kind of helpless feeling at the beginning. And then you just dive in and go to work on it and, spin it out. And it ends up turning out well, usually. I just finished up the last episode for season 3 and got it turned into the network, so I'm super excited about that. Now I can kind of turn the page and shift my energy to get into the field and doing some elk hunting.
Yeah, for sure. We're sitting here on the 22nd of August, and September is imminent. It's 8 days away, and our you and I's favorite month of the year is right around the corner. Talk a little bit about Unit 9, what you're seeing on the ground as far as antler growth, size of bulls, range conditions, etc.
It's very similar to last year, Jay. The bulls grew really good antlers again because of the winter and spring moisture. But then we've really been lacking moisture since then. We had a little bit of monsoonal activity, but it just didn't really hit heavy in Unit 9. So we're really dry. So the water sources are pretty limited right now. I'm really hoping for some rains here. The forecast is not looking real great right now. And it'd also be nice for some green ups and feed on the ground. But I tell you, it's still exciting because of the size of the bulls. I've been in the unit several times this summer. Been running some trail cameras, and the crop of bulls is very, very good. I mean, so good that a couple of the, year-long tags, auction raffle tags, bulls were killed in that unit, and they were giant. So anybody with a Unit 9 tag, or an Arizona tag for that matter, is really in for a treat with it, as far as size of antlers. Remains a little bit to be seen how they're going to rut. That's why I'm really hoping for some rain. Not, the big bulls are hard antlered right now, so they're done growing, obviously. But I would just like to see some healthy elk for the fall, so we get some good rutting and activity and some good calling action like we like to do.
Yeah, I've been watching the weather. It's just been nothing to watch, but I see there's 2 hurricanes coming in the Gulf, and I'm just wondering if somehow we can get some of that flow. If we get the moisture in, if the jet stream will pick it up and potentially move some moisture into the southwest, that would be phenomenal. Steve, you mentioned great antler growth across the state, and you and your guys, kind of spread out all over. You talk about Unit 9, but you've got guys all over Arizona, and it seems like the general consensus, I'm curious what your guides are saying as well, all over the state, is great antlers but super dry. Are there any units in your mind that stand out as far as maybe not being, as dry as others?
It would be kind of the typical White Mountain units, like Unit 1, lots of natural water there. Unit 27, they're more drought tolerant for sure than the central and northwest part of the state. And then next would be 3C, although 3C is not as drought tolerant as 1 for sure. But yeah, by and large over there in the northeast part of the state, it seems to be better as far as feed and the water scenario right now.
And across the board with your guides, if anybody's out there listening, have archery tags or early rifle or late, whatever you've got, do you have any openings at all, or do you want people to call you? What's the status with that?
Yes, absolutely, Jay. I'm going to be out and about some, so if they get my kind of extended absence greeting, feel free to leave me a message and let me know what tag you've got. But at this point we're wide open for hunts, and I think it's really due to the COVID situation, people just being real hesitant about what's going to happen next with it. It's really been a unique situation this year, one I hope we don't ever have to repeat again. But yeah, at this point, I would welcome phone calls and would love to talk with people about any hunts that they would like to book with us. Absolutely.
Steve, it seems to me with the craziness going on that about November 4th, this situation's probably going to get resolved, I would think, and probably are not going to hear a whole lot more about it after that.
I really hope so, Jay.
You're not taking the bait, are you?
I hope things go the right way with this election, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, for sure. Steve, we've got a slew of questions here from Instagram followers. I put it out there to ask Steve Chappell Guide Service questions, ElkCampTV questions. So let's pile through some of these, and then I have some as we go along that I might interject and try and draw a little bit more out of you. So let's just dive in here.
Okay, sounds great.
What are some of the best things you can do as a helper on an archery bull hunt?
Man, I would say the most valuable thing you can be on most archery hunts would be a caller. And so someone who is, pretty proficient on the calls and can call well is going to be super valuable to a buddy on an archery hunt. Aside from that, if the unit's glassable or the area you're hunting is glassable, being a glasser and being able to, spot up some bulls and know what you're looking at and, give your buddy some good intel on some bulls that you're glassing up. So, I would tell a helper, if you're a good caller, bring your calls and be ready for that. If not, the best help that you could be would be, glassing and taking inventory of bulls.
Yeah, I think that's a good answer. And Poppy Scott, she seconded that during your answer there. She was fired up that you said that. A couple things that I'd like to point out too, Steve, to kind of further what you're saying is, and I see it a lot, and in Arizona, because tags are so hard to get, everyone wants to help. And, the worst type of helper is, quite honestly, the helper that's selfish and the helper that just wants to go to the best spots, the helper that doesn't really want to help. They just want to hear, the most action, the most activity. The best kind of helper is the guy that says, hey, I'm willing to go off, send me off if you just want to check a spot. And when that helper goes, that helper stays. Steve, there's people that have been helping you for years that there's some that, you kind of have to watch. And then there's some that you can just give them a dot on a map and that they're going to cover it. They're going to stay there till dark. They're going to give it full effort. They're not going to push the elk. They're not going to get in there and, move it.
Right.
They're just going to see what's going on. So I would give the advice as a helper, if you're being sent somewhere, you're being sent there for a reason. If nothing's going on, maybe that's what you need to report is nothing's going on, but that doesn't mean you leave your post early.
Yeah.
You can adapt and be like, it's totally dead here. I need to bounce over. I need to, be valuable. But a lot of times when I'm sending someone somewhere, maybe I'm sending just to see what's shaking over there and okay, it's quiet. Okay. But when they come back and say, well, I left there an hour before dark. Well, you didn't even stay till prime time. They could have fired up. So, I mean, from that perspective, bring value. And then also committed. Be the guy that's, grabbing trash in camp and, taking it to town and dumping it, saying, hey, do we need water? Do we need fuel? What do we need? And being a value. Don't be the guy that's sitting there eating all the bags of potato chips and eating all the food and, if you get back
hungry.
I'm hungry. When's dinner ready? If you get back to camp early, organize, clean up stuff, get stuff ready. And just go above and beyond. The best helpers that I've had over the years are guys that literally they just go, and they're always doing something to add value to the hunt. They're not like, hey, I don't want to go over there anymore because it's just dead. Can you send us somewhere better? It's like, no, I'm sending you to that point because I know there's a big bull there. Go find them.
Yeah, exactly.
And then
don't go to an area and overcall it,
Yeah.
blow it out with calls and try to call a bunch of elk in and
Yeah.
just throw a barrage of calls out there because you're doing nothing but damage. Because then if the hunter goes there the next day and those elk have been called at and pushed and come in and smelled human scent, or seen that a call wasn't what it was supposed to be, then you've made the hunt even harder. Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. The other thing is, when you talk about being a caller, I think it's huge help if your buddy has a tag and you can call, especially if you make decent sounds and you have the ability to let maybe if you're not so good that you can call bulls right to your feet like Steve can, but if you can keep the elk bugling, keep the elk, engaged,
Yeah.
that's always a huge help too, and be able to fade back and get, elk responding and let your buddy slip in there and take a look and try and see what kind of elk they are.
Yeah, absolutely. And and if calling's not your forte, just be honest with yourself and your buddy. And like you said, Jay, go check out areas. I mean, I've had guys that are phenomenal that come back. They'll pull out a map and they'll show you in detail where the elk were at, and where they were headed and what the wind was doing. They just have super detailed information, and I'm kind of a detailed info guy. I want road numbers, I want tank names, I want mileage, all of that stuff, coordinates. You know what I
Yep.
mean? That's a
Yep.
valuable scouter right there.
For sure, 100%. Okay, next question. Is Steve's elk program for Arizona non-residents only?
Yes, I would assume they're talking about zero hunt fees there. Um, Basically, I had to set it up that way because of the 90-10 tag split in Arizona. The 90% resident, they get at least 90% of the tags. The residents get up to 10% of the tags. And to be honest, Jay, I just can't come up with an equitable way to make it make sense for me and the residents. That's the bottom line. If I'm going to offer the program to someone, I want to cover their hunt 100%. And I don't want to, base it on how many points they have, or, if they're putting in for these units, I'm only going to put up this much money toward it. Do you know what I'm saying? I want to have it pretty black and white and cut and dried that way. And for now, I just haven't been able to come up with an equitable way to do it. So it's for non-residents at this point.
And Steve, for those that are listening that don't really know about zero hunt fees, give the 30,000 foot explanation of it.
Yes. So under this program, a member would pay $349 a year. The best thing about the membership is it covers your guided hunt if you draw a tag. So yes, if you draw the very first year, which I've had several members do, your hunt is covered by that membership. And then, of course, it also covers their yearly hunt choice and application consultation. I help them navigate through the application process very efficiently. I help them pick hunts individually that fit their individual goals and expectations for a hunt. So I'm not having all the members apply for the same hunts by any means. It does not pay for application tag fees. I get asked that quite often. Those are costs that are associated with an elk hunt for anyone. So again, the biggest thing is that the $349 a year covers the cost of the guided hunt, and they're not locked into the membership. So if they draw early on, they don't have to stay in and continue paying the membership fee. It's totally up to them.
Good stuff. I know you've had a lot of people draw and successful. I mean, you can get a, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 elk hunt for a couple of years of applying at $349. You're in it for $750, and it's a great value. And I know you've had a lot of success with that.
Yeah, yes. Matter of fact, my muzzleloader hunter from 2019, first year member, so he paid $349 and came and killed a great bull with me. His episodes on ElkCampTV, and he was just ecstatic about the whole thing, and so was I. Yeah.
Good. Next question here. Read lots of different strategies on cow calling, depending on the situation. Any general rules?
I would say, in general, for me, anytime I cow call, I kind of like to start off, more subtle, more sweet, more soft with my calling, and build if necessary. So I don't go out there and just right off the bat hit the woods and hammer it with real aggressive calling. I feel like getting in tight with bulls, and being, say 75 to 120 yards from them has been, my success has come from that over the years. And so I say, whether you're blowing a mouth diaphragm or an open reed call, being subtle and sweet on it. And as far as sequencing, I don't overdo that either. I'm going to typically blow 1 to 3 calls in a sequence and let that be it. I'm not going to go out there and just blah, 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 hammer it and try to sound like a herd right off the bat. It just seems to me like if the woods is fairly quiet and you just hammer it that way, it just kind of comes across unnatural.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, and then I'll build as needed. I'll build all the way up to that extra scream sound, but basically that's if I'm getting nothing out of anything else. That's kind of my last resort.
And wouldn't you say building up that extra scream, certainly the 25th of August, you're not going to probably be doing that right off the bat, but maybe September 25th, you might light into that pretty quick. Yeah.
Anytime, say from the 18th and after is when I'm going to bring that call into the mix. And I'm still super hesitant about it, but it's just amazing how well it works. But again, not a call that I recommend just going out and trying on the elk until you've really, in your mind, kind of mastered it and perfected it, at home and in your truck, and then give it a shot out in the woods.
Yeah. Next question. First archery bull hunt in unit. Let's see. First archery bull hunt in unit for first time. Been doing lots of scouting. Tips for what not to do. So,
well, I would say the first thing is, with these elk, you always have to hunt with the wind right. So my most important part of gear, aside from my calls, and maybe more important, is my wind checker. I'm always gonna hunt the wind right. So figure out what the wind is doing in the mornings and evenings in the area you want to hunt, and don't let those elk get your wind. Is the first thing that I would say. Because it's something about me. I just hate blowing elk up. Even though I can be hunting in a unit that's 30 square miles, and if I blow elk, I can go hunt a different group. There's just something in me, Jay, that hates blowing them up.
I'm good at it, by the way.
You're good at it?
Blowing them up.
Oh no, I've hunted with you. You're really particular and good at it. Oh gosh, what else? What not to do?
Something I would say too, Steve, is like if it's a unit for the first time, I feel like driving at night, after dinner and driving for a couple hours and just stopping and listening, not getting out and calling, but just rolling down the window. Don't even get out of the vehicle, especially if you're in Arizona or maybe New Mexico where there's a lot of Forest Service roads. Some of these Colorado hunts and stuff, it's different. But, if this guy's certainly got an Arizona tag, you can do a lot of work after dinner for a couple hours by just driving, pulling off the side of the road, being very quiet, just roll the windows down, shut the truck off, not clanking around, and just immediately listen. And, trying to mark on your map, or, whether you're using a, Onyx map or, whatever you're using, mark, 3 bulls, 6 bulls, no bulls, 0 bulls, 2 bulls, 7 bulls.
Yep.
And just covering country in the unit and trying to find those pockets of elk where they're gathering and bugling. And a lot of times they'll be quiet and they're not going to bugle a lot during the daylight, and then all of a sudden they let their guard down at night, and you can find good areas where there's 6, 7, 8, 10, 12 bulls all balled up, and do that night after night, and you're going to end up finding where the elk want to be. And then once you know where those elk want to be, that surely helps you on those evening hunts, because Okay, it's, an hour before light and it's quiet, but I know that in 2.5 hours there's going to be, 6 bulls right here. So then you
Yeah,
try and backtrack. Okay, where are they coming from? Um, any
absolutely.
anything else you can think of on first time bull hunter and first time in the unit?
I would say too, to most people have a call or calls that they're good at, and then some that they're not so strong at. I would say, let's say that if let's say that you struggle with chuckling or you struggle with using a mouth diaphragm. I would say don't blow those calls that you feel aren't your strong suit. Focus on what you're good at. If you're good at blowing an open reed call, focus on that. It's amazing to me. I would say, Jay, easily 80% of the elk I've called in over the years have been with an open reed call. I know it takes some practice to master an open reed call, but I think someone can get up to speed fairly quickly on one. If they listen to elk actually calling and they listen to people who are good at it and kind of pattern their calling after that. So focus on your wheelhouse, and if you bugle to locate, don't think that you have to chuckle. Chuckling is not super important. I feel like it can be, if you're solid at it, but if it's not a call that you're strong at, just keep it in the tackle box and work on it when you're home, and don't use it on the elk.
Yeah, and one other thing that came to my mind when you were talking, Steve, is, a lot of these Southwest, United States states that offer elk hunts, Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, Utah. A lot of the elk are around water, and especially this year when it's so dry. A couple things that I
Yeah,
would say is if you're planning to hunt around a certain dirt tank or water of some sort, and you're driving in your vehicle, back way off and walk in subtly as if there are elk at that tank.
absolutely.
So many times I've seen people either A, drive right up and they're like, oh, we're going to dump the blind off. They pull up and there's elk in the water tank already.
Yeah,
Or two, they pull up, 150 yards away and think, oh, I can get out. And those elk are not stupid. And, park 4 or 5 or 600 yards back or more and slide in, and don't just walk the road in, because those elk, if they're already at the tank, they're going to be sitting there in the tank looking in that direction.
yeah,
Ease up, and when you get just close enough where you could maybe see, just pull your binos up and kind of slide in there. I mean, I always, on lots of these different animals, I like to always say, pretend that these things are going to shoot back at you. If you approach coos deer and you approach elk and you approach sheep, like, hey, if they see me or they know I'm there, they're going to start shooting. I think
yeah,
you would be a lot more successful, and that's what I try and do, because I mean, I've made the mistake of just blundering right up on something, and a whole herd of elk and a great big 6 point bull standing in the tank, and if you would have just slid up, you might have been able to get a shot.
yeah. Because they get harder to hunt and kill every time they get spooked. They
Right.
get less vocal and they get more nocturnal, which none of us like to hunt elk like that.
Yeah. Here's a
So I could,
question. What technique would you recommend for a New Mexico bull archery December hunt? I immediately go, yuck.
yeah, good luck,
You
right?
lost me at December and lost me at archery and lost me at New Mexico.
Yeah.
Um,
I would really say the only go-to tactic would be, spot and stalk and hope for good conditions for stalking them. Yeah, and if you can have a buddy, a friend around to help with the glassing, and I'm not sure about radios in New Mexico if that's legal or not. I know in Arizona it is legal, so that could be a help to them if it's legal. But I would say that's probably going to be a tough spot and stock hunt, and very difficult, because usually by that time, you have real cold temperatures, and so stalking is very noisy.
Yeah, and
It's
with
going
that
to,
as well, Steve, thinking of December, I mean, I've seen December time frames where water is no good just because there's,
yeah,
intermittent snow and rain and what have you. But,
yeah,
I've also seen super dry December. So, I mean, just watch it. If it's super
yep,
dry, you might be best just sitting a blind and running some trail cameras and, setting up and just waiting and letting the elk come to you. The
Yep.
other thing is if it flips the opposite and it's super cold and it's snowy, a lot of times, and Steve, you can relate to this hunting at Red Mesa a lot in late seasons. When it's really cold, a lot of times those elk have to be on their feet and they have to be feeding. And a lot of times when it's
Yeah.
cold, it will force them to feed. So that's where, like Steve was saying, having a glasser and being able to, if communication, and I don't know if New Mexico what the rule is, but be able to have some sort of communication with the spotter and have someone up on a high point and glassing for you, and at least getting you in the position where you can maybe see the elk from a couple hundred yards and then trying to stalk and get into position. That's kind of the tactic that I would
Yeah.
use.
Yeah, I'm like you though, Jay. I would pray for dry, mild weather to where you could sit water because that's a good tactic. And with that said, if you do have those conditions, I definitely would not stalk and pursue elk in an area where you plan to sit the water because if you bump those elk, then again, they're less likely to come in during shooting light to a water source if they've been spooked.
Good
So
stuff.
if you're going to spot and stalk, hunt somewhere else, and then come sit your water source and leave it undisturbed.
Good calling tactics when the elk are completely silent in non-glassable territory.
Yeah, so that's kind of a lot like Unit 9 can be at times. Really, I have to say that when I'm elk hunting, patience isn't my biggest virtue. I do a lot of moving, a lot of location calling, whether it's with cow calling or bugling. I'm looking for that one elk that wants to play. That's what I'm looking for. If I absolutely can't find that elk, there's a strategy called silent calling. Basically, the elk are silent, but you're calling. So in that situation, you would want to position yourself in an area where there's a lot of elk sign. You feel like there's elk nearby. Set up where you believe the wind is right. And what I would do is do some cow calling, say every 3 to 5 minutes, blow like 1 to 3 cow calls, and be ready with an arrow knocked, because a lot of times these bulls can come in silent and they're on you before you even know it, and they haven't made a sound. Again, I have to say that I haven't used that technique a lot, just because I like to move and find bulls that are going to be vocal. And I by no means bat 1,000 when I'm out there elk hunting. So quiet elk are frustrating to me as well. So I want your listeners to know that I do like hunting them when they're more vocal, and usually wait and pray for that scenario where I can have some calling success.
Yeah,
And then things work better.
yeah, for sure, Stephen. And two, I think, if you're the hunter and your buddy's a really good caller in that situation where Steve's talking about blind calling or silent calling, if it's me, I'm going to have my caller definitely upwind of my shooting position so that I'm going to be watching the downwind side at all times, because a lot of times in those silent calling situations, those elk are going to come in quiet, but they're always going to come in, most always, on the downwind side. So
Absolutely.
by putting the caller upwind of you or at a 45, that allows you to be back more in that, what, say, Chris Rowe would call the doorway, where those elk are going to come to an area where they
Yeah.
hear the calling and they're looking, but you're already in shooting range because your caller buddy is 50 or 60 or 70 yards more upwind from you and at an angle, so that position yourself in those blind situations, because they're very rarely are they just going to come charging in on the upwind side.
Yeah, especially if they're not vocal. If they're super charged up and ruddy, they might just come straight at the call. But you're right. When they come in quiet, they're going to take every advantage they can to circle downwind. Absolutely.
Yeah. Here's a question. I think it's a little bit more for me. It says, are you going to do an elk growth update for AZ units? Yes, I am. Through the whole first part of September, I'm going to be reaching out to guys all over the Southwest, getting kind of a early pre-rut update, getting a on the ground conditions, unit updates, antler growth updates. So stay tuned for those, and I'm going to try and continue through September to get periodic calls from guides and friends that I know that are out hunting and just try and get boots on the ground information.
Nice.
Okay. What is your calling strategy pre-rut last 2 weeks of August?
Yeah, again, I'm that guy that, is a more conservative caller. I lean toward, being more conservative with my calling. So, I would definitely start out, as I said earlier, with just nice, soft cow calling. That's how I would approach it. Because I feel like those bulls, they've rubbed that velvet off. They're feeling the rut coming on. There's an interest level there. And sometimes they'll come in eagerly to cow calling at that time. If they don't, that's a time when I might, try a little bugling. Again, not super aggressive bugling, maybe just, just high, clean, pretty bugle. If you're a good chuckler, that's when a little chuckling can come in, not aggressive chuckling, but just kind of that laughy chuckle that those bulls make, kind of that unaggressive chuckle. Bulls are kind of territorial that time of year. They're establishing, dominance and territory. So they can come into bull sounds, but I'm always going to start things off with cow calling. Over the years, I've been amazed at, the success I've had in late August with bulls, because they haven't been called at a bunch yet, or maybe they haven't been called at all. And, if they hear some nice cow calling, that's what they're about. And that's what they're looking to do is join up with cows and get things started. So, they can come in eagerly, sometimes bugling and sometimes not.
Yeah, and also, Steve, curious your thoughts. Early season, a lot of these OTC Colorado hunts, this year it doesn't start till September 2nd, but I believe Nevada, I think, already is rolling. I think Utah starts early, but like Steve says, doing some subtle cow calling, kind of starting out, just seeing what's shaking. But I've also had quite a bit of success, Steve, just kind of doing some little, kind of intermittent bugling, and doing some raking and some rubbing, almost like a bull's just kind of getting going. He's just, a lot of times those bulls just want to see who's over there raking and what's going on. They're not coming in aggressive. They're not coming in to fight. They're just kind of who's over there. What do you got going over here? And maybe within a little bit of raking, and for those that are listening, raking is when you take and you're trying to simulate an elk rubbing their antlers on brush, a lot of times aspen and juniper and pinyon pine, some of the smaller oak brush and stuff. And early season, late August, a lot of times they're rubbing their antlers like crazy because they've just rubbed the velvet off and they're kind of getting their neck muscles and getting everything ready. And that's when you see a ton of rubs. That last week of August, first week of September is when I would say most of the rubs are made. And so if you can kind of simulate just, raking by taking a tree branch and raking the branch against a tree and try and simulate that antler sound, I think that could be huge. Another tactic is get a couple of kind of smaller 5.45, maybe small 6-point sheds.
Absolutely.
And tick them together. Do some tickling, not clashing and fighting, but more just bulls. You see them that early season where they're just kind of just messing around and squealing and doing that. That's been super successful for me.
Yeah, I agree. Those kind of sounds are way better than making elk sounds if you're not real proficient, especially chuckling. I know I mentioned chuckling earlier, but I feel like if a guy doesn't feel super confident in chuckling and knowing how to do it unaggressively, that you're way better off using those non-vocal sounds like you're talking about with the raking and the antler tickling. Absolutely, I couldn't agree more.
Question here, best tips for quickly field judging a bull coming in fast to the calls?
Yeah. The biggest thing for me when I'm looking at a bull to determine whether he's a trophy bull, a shooter or not, is looking for curve or belly in those points versus straight. If I see points that look straight, those are short points. So the first thing a guy wants to look for is he wants to look for fronts, that come out over the bull's nose and face and then curl up. Then glance at the thirds. The thirds are always a bonus if they've got good thirds. A bull can still score pretty well even with average thirds. And then the next thing I glance for is a good whale tail there in the back on the fifth and the main beam. If they've got good curvy points, average to strong thirds and a good whale tail, for most guys, that's going to be a pretty strong bull. If they've got 50-inch beams roughly, which is kind of average on big bulls, a bull with curvy fronts, good thirds, and a big whale tail, you're going to be looking at a bull that's in the 340, 350 range right there. So,
yeah, and Steve, I'd like to point out too, I think you make a good point of curvy points, but I think it's also important as they're coming in to be looking for any missing points, looking for broken points, looking for, always only a 5x6. And, if he had a G5, he would be 18 or 19 inches bigger, but he's missing a whole, he's only a 5x6. So for me, I'm looking at exactly that. I'm counting points. Is he a 6? Is he a 7? Does he have extras? What are his point lengths? I think you make a great point about belly and curve. I think I just put in a video on my Instagram and talking about field judging elk and kind of giving some examples with an elk antler in my hand, showing that belly and that curve. When you see lots of curvature in those actual points, and even the main beams, if the beams look pretty straight, then they're probably going to be short. If they, they go and they bell out, or they curve out and bell back in and then, maybe wave back out. Or if he's got a big whale tail, I mean, okay, he's got a really good beams. But I'm trying to evaluate as quickly as I can, what are my first impressions? Typically, my first impression is not wrong. Sometimes it's been wrong, but most of the time I'm looking, is he impressive right away? And if I'm looking as he's coming in and I notice a weakness, normally it's really puts me on a kind of a hold mode and kind of a stop mode of like, okay, this is not a shooter. Whereas if he's coming in and I'm like, okay, he's got everything, his fronts are long and curvy, he's sick, he's 5 points, so he's a 6 on each side, he's got extras, then I'm like, okay, I'm more on go. But a lot of times, Steve, and you can weigh in on this, like, right away, oh, it's a thin bull. Oh, it's short fronts, weak 1, 2, 3s, or look at the stubby backs, he's only got 4-inch fists. Those first impressions can speak a lot usually.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you, Jay. If you have to make a bull into a trophy bull when your first impression is that he's not a shooter, that is, if you're a trophy hunter and you're looking for a quality bull, and you're right, it's real easy to overlook a bull missing like a G2 or a fifth point or something like that in the heat of the moment. So like you say, make sure all those points are there, and everything is intact, and really trust in your first impression. If it's a wow factor, I tell my hunters, if that bull doesn't wow you and blow you away, he's not one that you want to shoot, if you have to think about it.
Yeah, good point. Okay, how do you avoid hunting pressure for Arizona Unit 8 archery elk hunt? And Steve, I know you've guided in that unit, and I've been in that unit as well. So how do you avoid pressure in Unit 8?
I would say the first thing, when you're hunting would be to get away from, major frontage roads and areas that people like to recreate in. And again, those are going to be centered around the more major frontage roads there, that lead south of Williams, because there's going to be not only hunters out there in the field, but there's going to be people camping and quadding and all of that, four-wheeling, that don't even really realize that there's a hunt going on. So if it were me, I would probably want to focus in areas, number one, further away from Williams, number two, away from the nice frontage roads, and then I would definitely want to look in the pinyon cedar country out there in the west part of the unit, and get into some of that rougher country. And I also know there's some rough country down there around Sycamore that a guy would want to look at. But I would just say, if he has time prior to the season, a day or two before the hunt, maybe just drive around and see where all the activity and where the camps are at, and just look to, be away from that.
Yeah, and something specific about Unit 8 is, I mean, and Steve, you've seen it firsthand. I mean, Unit 8, has some really nice bulls in it, and it's kind of a middle tier unit from my
Yeah.
perspective. It doesn't make, say, the top five of, best units, but it's still a pretty darn good unit. But one thing Unit 8 to be prepared for is Unit 8 can be very finicky bugling, very finicky
Yes.
rutting. You can have one day where they're just on fire and, just going like crazy, and then you could have 2 or 3 days where literally you don't hear a bugle during daylight, and the
Yep.
elk are right there. It's just the way Unit 8 is. I think it's because of all of that camping pressure and, extra activity. They never can really settle in and just really get going.
Yeah.
And I know people that hunt Unit 8, they complain a lot about, it being fairly finicky. So just kind of expect that, as well as I think, your tip, Steve, talking about getting away from Williams or getting away from those high traffic areas. I think anybody in any unit all across the Southwest could use that same bit of advice of,
Yeah.
get in those pockets where there's not the activity. Get in those pockets where maybe it's harder to, get into. And a
Yeah.
lot of
Maybe
times
have to
you'll
walk a
find
little.
some stuff that are, undisturbed.
Yeah. Even if they have to walk in a little ways, park
Definitely.
on a secondary road and hike in a ways. That I always say, when you get a mile or more away from your vehicle, you lose the majority of the pressure right there.
This question, I'm sure, is directed at me. Why do you hate bow hunters with a winky face? It's not that I hate bow hunters. I am a bow hunter myself. I'm not one of these crazed archers that's, shooting every day and all that 365. I'll shoot my bow and stuff when I have a great tag. But, and it's not, maybe people have heard me, talk negatively about bow hunters. Um, and I'm sorry if I've come across too negative, but it, to answer the question, I have nothing against bow hunters, but if I did put on my hat of what do I have against bow hunters, sometimes it's um, the fact that, well, there's several things. I think a lot of times guys, they shoot all summer and they're trying to be prepared, but they don't know when to draw their bow, they don't know where to aim,
Yeah.
they tend to fall apart when things go, and I've been there, I've done all of these things. So I throw myself in this category, but
Absolutely.
there is also, this thing of, well, I shot it with my bow. Well, this is this is going to rub some people the wrong way. So in my opinion, sometimes archery hunters have this notion of, well, I shot a lesser trophy because I shot it with my bow, and so that makes it better. I kind of have a problem with that. Yes, it's harder to kill things with your bow, but
Yeah.
I see people say, well, I shot a 5 point because I used my bow. Well, great. If that's what you want to do, that's great. But they almost use it as a crutch.
Yeah.
And, if I have a tag, I'm trying to shoot the biggest elk that I can. If I've got a slingshot, a muzzleloader, a rifle, whatever it
Right.
is.
Yeah.
Like, don't lower your standards because you're a bow hunter. But with that being said, if you're getting into archery and you're trying to harvest, something, then take the opposite approach of, I just want to get one and I'm super happy, and then the next year you draw just trying to get one, and get a handful of them under your belt and then become trophy hunters, because I've seen it too where guys put in for Arizona for 18 or 20 years, they've never shot a bow, they finally draw a tag, so then they buy a bow, and now all of a sudden they're the greatest thing since sliced bread to hunting, and they think that they know everything about it, and it's like, you've never drawn your bow on an elk. How do you even expect to come into camp wanting a 390-inch bull, and you've never even shot one?
Yeah. You're
So
right. It gets real when you draw on a bull. Yeah, and I would add to that with bow hunters. To me, the worst shot you can take is a quartering on shot. An elk is just so tough and resilient. And if you take a quartering on shot, usually your nightmare has just started. So I would really encourage people to take, broadside quartering away. If they take a frontal shot, it needs to be super close, and it needs to be in the right spot. Most people are going to shoot too low on that frontal shot. So I would tell people if they don't feel 100% confident in that, to avoid that. But nothing takes the place of a broadside shot and a double lung hit. That's where good things start right there.
Yeah, for sure. And I think archery, I think elk are the perfect animal to bow hunt. I think they are an
Yeah,
awesome animal to bow hunt. It's a big target. They eat really well. They're it's not a tiny target to try and shoot. And it's a great animal. It's a great hunt, great interaction. I think some of this question also is because I'm bagging on archery coos deer hunters a lot that want to come to Mexico and they want to bring their bow, and I'm like, go with somebody else. I want guys that can shoot a rifle at 300 to 500 yards when we find a big giant buck. I don't want to screw around with a bow. So I guess I'm crawdadding a little
I
bit.
hear you there.
I'm
I hear
crawdadding a
you
little
there.
bit, but it's like, um, if you're gonna become a bow hunter, great. Be proficient with your bow. Practice on drawing on animals, and like Steve said, shot selection. You cannot take bad shots. You have to take high percentage shots, and you have to be disciplined about that. Every year, and Steve, this is kind of the thing that nobody talks about, but in Arizona, I mean, I would say almost if there's 100 tags in a unit, there's 50 bulls that get wounded.
Yeah,
Nobody
I would
wants
say.
to talk about it, but the
Yep.
reality is a lot of those 50 are shots that should have never been taken. So if people can
Right.
take a higher percentage shot and be disciplined with the shot they take, I think we can drop that number of 50 down to probably 15.
Yeah, exactly. If guys wouldn't have that just get one in them mentality, and the bull don't die if the arrow don't fly. That's not a good mentality to have, because 99 times out of 100, if you take a shot that you think is marginal, you're going to wound that bull and you're not going to find him. And then if you're an honest hunter and spend days diligently looking, those are days you could be hunting
Yeah.
instead of looking for a wounded animal.
Yeah.
With my hunters, I talk about and I stress over and over good shot angles. But unfortunately, when I'm back calling, everything can fly out the window when nerves kick in. And that's the one part of the hunt that I can't control. And I kind of hate that sometimes.
Yeah, it's tough. All right, next question is midday calling tactics when elk are bedded and or silent. So we've already kind of talked about the silent stuff, but let's talk about midday calling when elk are bedded, Steve.
Yeah, I'll be honest, Jay. I don't do it a lot in Arizona, and that's where my experience is in Arizona. I don't hunt the bedding area as much in Arizona because the risk of blowing elk out, especially if they're not vocal, is super high. The wind, if you don't have a consistent wind, I would say that's the first thing you need is a consistent non-swirling wind to do that. I know elk, especially herd bulls, once they get their cows bedded and get them settled and they're stationary, they can be more vulnerable at that time than when they're up on their feet on the move. So there is something to be said for that. A bull, if he feels like he's got his cows bedded and you blow a call, he feels like he can get up and go check it out, whether you blow a bugle at him or maybe a cow call. So I do feel like that strategy can be effective, even though, I mainly hunt them during prime time mornings and evenings. The biggest thing for me, again, to stress would be, making sure that you've got a good, consistent wind before you try anything. And again, distance is going to be super important. A bull, whether you're hunting in prime time or in the bedding areas, they're going to be way more likely to come to a call if you're, say, 75 to 100 yards away versus 200 yards away.
Yeah, Stephen, I think there's a point where you've got a super premium tag and you're trying to kill a big giant bull, and then there's a lot of tags across the Southwest where you're just trying to kill any elk. And
Mm-hmm.
when you're just trying to kill any elk, and I can even see that being something that you would do in Arizona. Maybe someone it's their first hunt. I could see where hunting some of those bedding grounds and bedding areas would be advantageous. I think it can be super effective. I think what
Yeah.
Steve's talking about is if you've, kind of targeted a couple of bulls and you've got some really nice bulls, and the last thing you want to do is blow them out and they run for 3 or 4 miles and then you've got to repattern them and check them
Yep.
out. Whereas if you're just
Exactly.
kind of hunting, say in Colorado and you're OTC and you're up in the mountains and there's no one else around and it's like I'm just trying to kill a bull, then I could see how getting in tight to their bedding grounds and like Steve says, doing some calling and just being pretty patient, because a lot of times those bulls, if you're just kind of out on the outskirts at 75 yards, just cow calling every once in a while, that bull gets up periodically to check his cows. And if you just kind of stay in there with the wind right, he's probably going to wander over almost in bow range just to see what's going on, see who you
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
So,
Like you say, Jay, I would be way more likely to do it in areas like Colorado, where you've got more high country and more cool, shady areas. Where the temperatures are cooler, and it's more likely that they're going to be a little active during the midday.
and wouldn't you agree? I mean, a lot of situations, Idaho, Montana, Colorado, where you've got kind of those OTC situations where, most guys are just trying to kill a branch antlered bull.
Right.
So they are okay if they get in there and they blow something out. They're just trying to get one bull to come to them. I could see how that would be an effective tactic for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Will the bigger bulls usually be killed first week of archery or second? I believe he's talking about Arizona. And
Yeah,
are they usually called in?
man, I would say that is a lot dependent on conditions. My hunter last year in Unit 9 on the archery hunt got 3 shots at 3 different herd bulls on the first 3 mornings of the hunt. So if I were just to go by that, I would say definitely, early in the hunt. Um, they were not very vocal, and I was just able, with a little bit of luck, to get a bugle out of them and move in and happen to see that they had cows, and get in super tight with them and blow that. I talked about it last year with you, Jay, that lit ball, or that bull calling cows bugle, and they would come right over to that. But they were cowed up at that point, so they had cows. Um, Gosh, I always say in general, I would rather hunt them when they're, more aggressively vocal. It kind of seems to me like the bigger bulls are cowed up right off the bat in Arizona with our season, starting somewhere between the 10th and the 18th, depending on the year. Um, I would say if you had to pick a week and hunt, I would pick the second week. If you don't have to pick a week, I would start on opening day and hunt the whole thing if you could. But if I was forced to pick a week, I would want to hunt more vocal elk in general, and then hope that the weather conditions are good, and that you don't have high winds. That seems to be the hardest thing for me to deal with anyway as a caller, when you just have those sustained 20 and 30-mile-an-hour winds that are blowing in the morning and just relentless all day long. That's the toughest for me.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty hard to put your finger on whether the biggest bulls get shot early or late, or, the
Yeah,
first week or second. I
yeah,
think it's all across the board. I think it depends on who draws the unit, what guides are hunting. I mean, there's so many variables. I would not discount sitting water, and some big, big bulls have died, sitting water. I think
yeah,
guys that are willing to be consistent sitting, have killed some really, really big bulls, and be patient and
yeah.
sit and the thing I would recommend though in sitting water is it's very hard to be productive if you're bouncing around. If you're
Right.
bouncing from tank to tank to tank trying to, chase, it's super hard to
You're always a day behind.
yeah.
Yeah,
So I mean what you want to do is pick one spot that you've got good intel on, you've got, trail camera pictures, and you have to be consistent because if you're bouncing, you're always, one morning behind, one evening behind, and it just seems you'll end up blowing the whole hunt just because you're not being consistent with your pattern.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Absolutely. And it does take a lot of determination and resiliency to sit water day in and day out. But yeah, especially on the afternoon evening hunts, they can be super slow in Arizona. So that is a good tactic.
Okay, raking tips recommended or rather just call. I think raking can be phenomenal when you add in calling.
Yeah.
I think, well, let me back up and then I'll let you. I kind of jumped on this one, Steve. One of my favorite things to do, especially in Unit 9, is I have been successful sneaking in with my hunter close to elk, like 50, 60, 70 yards, pretty dang close, and then get the hunter ready, and then I back off about 10 yards and I start raking and I don't make a sound other than raking. I don't know what it is about that, but those bulls, it seems like when there's someone raking in their territory and then you don't answer them, they bugle at you and you just keep raking, they almost
Yeah.
it's so effective in Unit 9. They almost always come over and see, which has them walking right by the hunter.
Yeah. Yeah. And anytime you add a vocal element to it, it can either add to it or it can, make that bull nervous if he hasn't heard that bugle or that cow call or whatever it happens to be. And it better be spot on, especially if you're close to him. Yeah, I agree that non-vocal raking is the way to go, especially to start with if you're going to try raking.
Yeah, and
Try
I
doing
think
it without calling.
too, you know how when you're raking and a bull will bugle, if you just keep raking like you could care less about that bull, that's to
Yeah,
me, that's the deciding factor for me as far as just keep raking like you don't even hear the bull bugle, you don't even care, and
yeah,
it just drives those bulls that you're trying to call, it drives them crazy. I've seen it where it just they I would say it's probably a 70% chance that they're going to come within shooting range of where you're raking.
yeah. I would say so too. Absolutely.
Okay, next question. Gila, early September, what would be your daily hunt sequence? Glass early, then move and call.
Well, ideally for glassing, I would want to have a buddy there doing the glassing because I would not want to spend prime time during the hunt glassing because, if you glassed up a bull, unless he was real close, by the time you got down to him, he's probably not going to be vocal anymore. Now, I would say if you're hunting alone and you have nothing to go on and you're really looking to, hunt a trophy bull, yeah, maybe start out glassing. But boy, I would not spend every morning during the first 2 hours of light glassing because you're giving up that opportunity to call and have encounters with elk up close. Um, I would probably be more inclined if I was going to glass to do it in the afternoon and late evening and try to call in the morning again, unless he's got nothing to go on and he's trying to locate something trophy to hunt.
Yeah, and that I was going to say the same thing. If you're the type of guy that wants to find one great big bull and you want to kill a giant, then I would say I'm a good glasser, so one of my biggest
Yeah.
things is I want to be glassing until I find a bull that I want to go after. Then
Yep.
once I find him, then I'm going to make a plan and a strategy and a tactic to go after that bull. But if you're a guy that just wants to have a great elk hunt and be in the action, I think you're hurting yourself by glassing in the morning. I think you want to be glassing. If I had to choose, I would be glassing in the evening and running and gunning in the morning because I think
Absolutely.
your calling and bugling is much better. Your chances are much better in the morning. They seem to bugle better at the first 2 hours than the last 2 hours.
Yep.
But what's so great about glassing in the evening or the you know the late afternoon is a lot of times you can get up high and you can start seeing those elk out in the trees, not even out in the open, but you can go, oh, that's where they bed. Okay, and then you can kind of go, okay, and then they come out of the opening right there And you can take that glassing strategy the next evening and basically position yourself, because you know exactly where they went into bed and where they like to come out and how they start feeding. And okay, they break through this, small little opening first, and they
Right.
stay there till right at the last, and then they kind of beeline out into the open. And I've done that on lots of hunts where you've kind of figured them out the evening before, and then you make a good plan for the next night.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm like you. I would save my glassing for the afternoons and evenings, and then run and gun in the morning if possible.
Steve, we've got a question here. Unit 9 early rifle hunt. My odds are good, but I'd love to hear you two talk about your approaches. So it sounds like this guy's got an early rifle Unit 9 tag, which is a coveted, probably one of the best tags. Steve's drooling right now. Wipe your mouth, Steve.
Yeah,
Um,
call me, please.
probably one of the best hunts in the state. One of the things that jumps out at me with Unit 9, Steve, and I mean, Unit 9 so well, and I've hunted a bunch too, is you've got a whole mix of country. You've got, the
Yeah,
stuff on the east side of, say, Tucson, and it's fairly thick, timber all the way up to Grandview Tower, and then you drop off Grandview Tower down into the upper basin where you've got some thick stuff, but you also have some open areas where those elk like to be. And then, you've got
yeah,
the west side out west of Tucson, all the way out there towards the cataract, where as it gets more and more open, it makes glassing, you know, easier and being able to spot elk. And there's lots of good little knobs and places. And then you've got, down south, the dog knobs and, some of that country out east where you can see a little bit. For me, if I had that Unit 9 early rifle tag, I would spend the 2 weeks prior during the archery season, I would be up glassing. I would be
yeah,
glassing morning and night, and I would be trying to see, where's the hunting pressure, who's moving what around. I would even be, just talking to hunters and, not at prime time. I would not, I'd be glassing, but 9, 10, 11 o'clock, see someone on the road, stop, say hi, tell them you have an early rifle tag. And it's so funny how sometimes there's guys that are archery hunting and they're like, they're so fed up because they've been chasing one big bull and they can't get it done, that they're like,
yeah,
yeah, you got an early rifle tag, I'd hunt right here, don't go in there now, but as soon as the season's over, I'll let you know exactly what he's doing. You
yeah,
can get some good intel from the archers, but definitely stay out of their way and don't get in there. And I've run into people in the woods before prime time, and you're just, all of a sudden you hear this other hunter calling. You go over and try and talk to them. They're like, "Well, I've got an early rifle tag," and it's like, "Hey, man, your hunt isn't
yeah,
for 2 weeks.
yeah. It's
I'm
not
not
cool.
telling you what to do, but man, be a little bit courteous if you were in, this hunter situation of stay out of there a little bit. Stop
Yeah,
calling and, stay away, stay out on the outskirts a little bit."
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and being sensible about when you talk with people, that's very good advice. Yeah, and I would say, for him to keep in mind that he's got a rifle, so I would focus on areas that, where you can use that rifle. Hunting in the really thick, tight stuff, the more, archery type stuff, even with a gun can be frustrating. So if I had that tag, I would want to focus on areas that were more broken to open, where I could reach out and first off see the elk, see the bulls, and then let that rifle do its thing.
Yeah. Steve, too, I think when you have those tags, I think people put such high expectations on the hunt and so much pressure on themselves,
Yeah,
it almost takes the fun out of it. I would, try and urge this listener or this Instagram follower to just enjoy it, enjoy all of it, and, not put so much pressure on yourself, especially if you're kind of new to it. Enjoy the whole experience and realize that you do have a phenomenal tag. But
yeah,
if you put too much pressure on yourself, I've seen a lot of hunts ruined where guys they just can't hold up to the pressure of having the great tag.
yeah. And when you feel pressured up, you usually don't hunt well and make good decisions. It's amazing how that happens. But if you just take the pressure off and go out there, number one, to have fun. Hunt hard, but have fun doing it. Usually good things are going to happen for you. Even though there are some nice special bulls in Unit 9 this year, still 350 plus bulls are not around every tree by any means. So yeah, I would say, like you, Jay, don't set an unrealistic expectation and hang the whole success on a score, because most times you're going to be disappointed.
Right.
If you take the pressure off, hunt hard, but have a good time doing it, good things will usually turn out for you.
And call Steve.
Yeah, absolutely.
Call me if you got an early rifle tag at 9. Okay.
Absolutely.
Do you apply for Arizona elk draw? And if so, what are your usual top choices?
Yeah, I've kind of been the guinea pig for this listener. I've drawn my second choice 3 different times, and even though I've taken bulls, and 2 of them were real nice bulls, I was kind of disappointed in the hunt quality. By that I mean the bugling activity, the lack of bugling. So I've really gotten to where, the first thing you need to understand when they're applying for bull elk is it comes down to your first 2 choices on your application. You're going to get one of those 2. And with the experience of those 3 hunts in my past, I've really gotten to where, Jay, if I'm going to draw a tag, I want it to be a quality hunt. Otherwise, I'd rather just guide someone who's got a great tag and experience that hunt with them in a great unit. So really, for me, I've kind of narrowed it down, and this is just me and my opinion, so I don't want this to completely slant your listener into what they apply for. But for me, it's units 9, 23, 10, and 3C are basically my considerations that I kind of have on the table on a yearly basis, that I have to whittle it down to 2 choices. Again, I want to have the opportunity to hunt 350 and better bulls. And the main thing for me is I want to have good calling interaction and enjoy the fun of that. And so I'm going to want a unit that's got a lot of bugling activity. Those units that I just mentioned, other than 3C, are managed on an alternative management program. And you really do see a difference, not only in the bull to cow ratio and the age class of bulls, but in the bugling activity. And you can see that directly reflected in the success rates as well. So those 4 units are going to be the ones that I look at.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm kind of in the same boat. I've got 17 points as an Arizona resident, and can pretty much now draw almost any tag out there. And, because of my schedule and stuff at the +6, I just chose to even just do a bonus point this year. I didn't even try. But, I'm looking at 9, I'm looking at 10, I'm looking at 23 north, looking at 23 south, and those are probably the 4. I've hunted 3C a lot, but I just don't feel 3C is probably on par with those other 4. It's right there behind it, but the years of killing 400-inch plus bulls, they still do it every once in a while in 3C, but I think it used to be a better big bull unit. And I think a lot of that has to do with the White Mountain Apache on the west side. They shut down the hunts for a while. And so for a handful of years, there were some really big bulls just because there wasn't any pressure on the White Mountain and those bulls would come across. Steve, I noticed you don't mention Unit 1. That's usually thrown into that mix. You guided a year or 2 ago in Unit 1 and just didn't feel like you had the age class there that Unit 1 is kind of known for.
Yeah, it's a beautiful unit. It's the prettiest unit in the state, but that's how I felt about it. I just felt like the age class of the bulls in general was low in the unit, and it was just really hard to turn up, even 320, 330 plus bulls, let alone 350 plus. I mean, I know there's some around, but it's a giant unit. And when you don't have that age class overall, you're mostly looking at, 280 to 310 bulls and having to sort through a lot of that to have the very occasional encounter with a 330 plus bull. So I kind of took that off my radar as being a top trophy producing unit. Definitely a unit if a guy wants to see a lot of elk, a beautiful, pristine unit and have a lot of fun. But for a strict trophy hunter, I think there's better options like we just talked about.
Got a question here. Third rifle season, Colorado, cow calls or bugles to locate bulls?
Gosh, I would say optics mostly.
Yeah.
And if you were going to use calls, I would say cow calls. I always say calls are definitely important no matter the season, not necessarily to call bulls in, but if you need to stop a bull for a shot, or if you need a follow-up shot, it's amazing how calling will keep them right there and confused as to what's going on. So you always want to have your calls with you that way. I would not really expect success with calling, especially if you're hunting over-the-counter public land. The elk are typically going to be deep and dark and not vocal that time of year. So it's either going to come down to glassing or just going in and rooting them out and doing a lot of hiking and hard hunting.
Steve, we've talked about calls. For those people out there, I'm sure most know that Steve actually makes his own calls and designs his own calls, and I believe Rocky Mountain Game Calls. Actually, they changed the name. I'll let you tell us about it. But you've got the new Heartbreaker call. It's awesome. External read. So you've got the Trophy Wife and the Heartbreaker. They're two of my favorite externals, as well as a whole mouth call selection. Talk a little bit about your calls and your thoughts on these different calls.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jay. So yeah, I work with Rocky Mountain Hunting Calls. I've been working with them for 10 years now. It's been awesome to collaborate with them on these calls. And like you just said, we just came out with this Heartbreaker call for 2020. I carried a prototype in the field with me last fall, had incredible success with it. It's an external reeded call. It does have its own unique tone. But I was telling you earlier, day to day between the Trophy Wife and the Heartbreaker, it just kind of depends. Day to day, one of them will be my sweetie pie. So I would encourage your listeners to check those external reads out and see which one they like the sound of. And then we've got 3 mouth reads. We've got the Elk Camp, the Tines Up, and the Royal Point. They're all built on what's called the GTP frame. They got the pallet plate incorporated into them, which I think was the biggest advancement to come along in elk calling. I know you and I, back in the mid-'90s when we first met, remember you were the one that gave me the very first pallet plate call that I ever had. And it was just unbelievable to me how much of an advancement that was with mouth reads.
I think the stabilization within the top of your mouth, that's where that pallet plate, has kind of paved the way for people to become better mouth callers. I think people have been able to keep that call stable, and I just think it's a groundbreaking, thing. And most good elk calls now, mouth calls, have it.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, so my orange Elk Camp reed is kind of my go-to cow calling reed. And then my blue Royal Point and red Tines Up are kind of more of my bugling reeds that I pound on. I think they make great grunt and chuckling sounds as well if someone, practices on them and gets to that point where they can make those sounds. The other element that I should mention is a bugle tube or a grunt tube. A couple of years ago, we came out with the Rogue grunt tube. Actually, I think it was 2019 was the first year we came out with it. I like that we incorporated a lip ring on the mouthpiece. It gives it a little bit bigger opening to where you can do those nice lip ball or display bugles. The call is very compact and lightweight, but it has real three-dimensional sound is what's amazing about it. It just creates real nice back pressure. And what that does when you're bugling, if you just blow through a straight tube, your listeners would probably notice that you quickly lose your breath. You just blow and your breath just goes away from you. But a tube that has back pressure allows you to make those real three-dimensional sounds because there's something, backing it. And it just sounds like you're blowing it into a 50-gallon drum, and it gives it just more authenticity. Sounds way more elk-like, whether you're bugling, chuckling, grunting. All those sounds just sound way more realistic with a good tube.
And I always tell people on my podcast as well as on my Instagram, if you want to learn how to call and become a better caller, listen to everything that Steve Chappell does with all of his calls. Where's the best place there, Steve? On the YouTube channel? Or I know there's some phenomenal videos and as well as the Elk Camp TV. But what's the best place you tell people to? Well, you probably don't. You're so humble. But where would you tell me to direct people to kind of go and listen to your calling?
You know what, Jay? I'm glad you asked. In addition to what you just said, YouTube, and of course, if they can watch the show, there's usually a tip of the week. Not on every episode, but most of them. I would say Instagram. If they would go to my Instagram account, my daughter does the posting and she does a really good job with it. Love having her do that. But we do a Make the Call Monday. So every Monday we post up, me blowing a call. And, I'll be honest, usually it's bugling because it's more entertaining. But I would say that's a good source, and it's just usually a 10 to 20 second call. I don't necessarily explain the call, but I think a lot of learning to call is hearing it and hearing how it should sound and then fashioning your sound after that. I think that's the most valuable thing, rather than hearing somebody explain how to do it in minute detail. I've always been more of a learner by listening. So go to our Instagram page at ElkCampTV. They could even scroll down to every single Monday if they haven't been following us and listen to those calls.
Great stuff. Got a question. I know they all suck, but what's the best OTC elk hunt in Arizona?
Oh, man. I'll be honest, that's a question I am not the person to ask. I have not hunted that OTC hunt. I see some people who do. I follow some people on Instagram. I know the Presmix in particular killed a couple of nice velvet bulls on OTC hunts. But that's just a question. I don't know, Jay, if you have any info on that.
It's so out of my wheelhouse. I don't pay any attention to.
Yeah.
I pay attention to the top quality units, and other than that, I don't even have a place to even start. It's not even something that's on my radar.
Exactly, because that's someone that's going to have super local knowledge,
a lot of time.
A lot of time on their hands. Exactly. Usually very hot conditions, and probably a lot of time with maybe not even seeing elk. So it can be a very frustrating scenario as well. Don't expect to have, the kind of experience that you would on a draw tag.
Yeah. Our Swarovski NL 12 power, finally the all-around chest piece and tripod glass, looking to pair with BTX 65.
I'll let you answer that.
The answer is yes. I have the 12 power Swarovski NLs, and they're phenomenal. I can actually hand hold the 12 powers, where for years I had the 1250 ELs, and my hands historically always have a little bit of shake, and I could just never really hand hold the 1250s comfortably. But I can tell you these 12x42 NLs with the super wide field of view have made it where I can handhold. I am going to be using them here at the OT6 this coming month of September and really put them through the paces of an actual hunting season. So after that I'll be able to really tell you. But all indication, yes, they're fantastic. Absolutely, Swarovski's hit a home run, and I think for someone that's looking for an all-around chest bino, I would normally tell them the 10 power EL was the go-to, but now by being able to have 2 more power and have actually 3 more feet of field of view than the 10s, these 12s are pretty sweet for sure, so you need to check them out. We got 2 more questions here. Any tips for mid-September elk calling?
Oh wow! If they're vocal or they're not vocal, again, I'm going to go back to saying that I always typically start out with cow calling. And I'm going to build from there. And every scenario and bull is going to be different. Jay, in the last 4 or 5 years, I've become more of a bugler, but that's just because I've been encountering herd bulls. And I use bugling basically in that scenario only for the most part is when I'm dealing with a herd bull. Otherwise, I'm purely cow calling because I feel like with satellite bulls, that's what they want to hear. And if you focus on and perfect your cow calling, you're going to be wildly successful out there. So again, I'm going to, if I'm not encountering bugling elk during the day, like we talked about earlier, I'm going to go out at night after dinner in the dark and quietly troll around on frontage roads and listen for bugling and pockets of bugling and make notes of those and come back and hunt those in the morning. But again, my first line of offense is going to be using my cow calling and only bugling with herd bulls when I get in tight with them and their cows. Because I feel like if you just go out with that bugling approach, and just throw that out at every bull you encounter, you're going to scare more elk away than you're going to call in by cow calling.
All right, let's talk about this a little bit because you every year you get me intrigued. The last few years with this bugling at herd bulls.
Mm-hmm.
So you found a guy that used to, I mean, literally hardly ever carry a bugle. You have changed to carrying a bugle and using it in certain situations. Can you describe the situation where you've had the most success?
Yeah, it's definitely when I'm able to get in tight with an aggressive herd bull. And by tight, I mean usually 75 yards because it seems like to be the magic distance. And what I try to do, Jay, and if you've seen my episodes of my show this year, I don't want to back off at that point and leave my hunter up and create more distance between me and the bull, because then that's going to give that bull the opportunity to either push his cows away from me or the cows might get up and walk away from me. So I want to stay in that zone where I feel like I put him in that fight or flight mode. But the biggest thing I think that I do to be effective is how you blow that call. You know, when I blow that lip ball or that bull calling cow's bugle, I blow it with an attitude, like I mean business, like I say I'm making a statement. I'm not asking a question whatsoever. I'm going in there and to me, I'm putting two things into that call. First of all, I want it to sound like I'm a player and I'm flirting with his cows and making those cows go, wow, that sounds impressive. That sounds like a big stud over there. So I'm bringing that level of jealousy up in him by, you know, putting that flirtation in there. But then I'm also, you know, at the same time punching him right in the nose by making it a statement and being really aggressive with it and not asking a question right out of the gate. You know, so I don't want to go in there and be kind of passive and see how he reacts to it. I want to make him immediately make a decision about it. And I've just found when you blow it, you know, with a lot of volume, with the right tone and like you mean business, that's when you get a reaction out of it.
Would you say that you've totally changed your reaction to the bugle from, say, 10 years ago when we were running around calling elk and messing around?
Yeah, I would say absolutely, Jay. It's been kind of a 180-degree switch. And really, it's because back then I didn't feel like I had that bugle in my repertoire. I didn't feel like it was in my tackle box to even pull out. Like I wasn't confident in making that sound or really knowing what sound I wanted to make. But now, you know, I start the call off with maybe a half a second of high pitch, just a half a second of high pitch, and then I dump it down into that lip ball sound. And I feel like, you know, I do it in a pretty heavy way. It sounds pretty heavy and aggressive. And then I end it at the end with you know, there's a stop to it, but also it kind of breaks back into that high pitch and dumps off again at the end. And it just seems to be the sound that just trips their trigger when you're in tight with them.
Steve, do you think over the next week or two you could do a Monday calling tip and demonstrate that? Or if you already have, maybe text me the date of the Instagram post, because I'm curious about that.
Absolutely.
And
yeah.
so when you engage in that, you're not like, I wonder what's going to happen. You've done it enough successfully that you know what's going to happen.
Yeah, Jay, I would say honestly, 8 to 9 times out of 10 when that scenario unfolds like that. And I blow that. And I'll tell you this, sometimes I feel like when I blow the call, I think to myself, yes, I hit it right. I nailed it, and at times when I feel like I didn't nail it like I want to, that's when I don't get the reaction.
So you really have to nail the tone that you're like Joel used to say when he first started talking about the bull calling cows. I had
Yeah.
him on the podcast and I was kind of, pretty skeptical, but he was just adamant about it. But you would say that you're in 100% agreement with what he was saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And giving credit where credit is due. I think that's the mark of someone who, is able to learn from others and take what others have, and recognize something that might potentially work. And I think Joel was spot on. And when I heard him talking about that, I set out to master that sound. And I've blown it a lot, practicing it, in my study and in my house. Try to do it when my wife's not around. Definitely freak my pets out doing it, but yeah, I just feel like when you get to where you can blow it and it's got a lot of volume, a lot of that heavy lip ball sound to it, and just a lot of emotion behind it is what you want. And yeah, if your listeners go onto my Instagram page and just scroll down through the Mondays, they'll see quite a few clips of me doing that already, but I'll continue to post some of those up.
Okay, fantastic. That's great. I
Yeah.
look forward to seeing more situations where it's worked for you. All right, last question here. First season rifle in Colorado, glassing or calling?
Yeah, I would say a lot of that depends on the area that you're hunting and if they're bugling or not. If it is glassable and they're not super vocal, I would definitely spend time behind the glass. Um, but if they are vocal, like the area I hunt in Colorado, Jay, on the private land with my dad, they're super vocal. So we're able to just dive right in and go after them. So I would say, guy's going to have to kind of assess the situation. Definitely bring the optics, make sure you can mount them on a tripod, be ready to glass. But if you have vocal elk, I would say get right in there with them and get in the mix with them. But it's going to be a little bit of a question mark whether they're bugling or not. I think the season starts around the 10th. So, in most areas, I think there could be bugling at that time.
Yeah, and it seems like Colorado, at the odd six, it's on private land. It definitely can still be cranked up, and I've seen them there
Yeah.
where you hunt. Shoot, they're sometimes bugling all the way into third season.
Yeah. Yeah. In the first season, they're bugling their guts out. So I hope that's the scenario that your listener encounters, and he can use his calls and stalking and get right in there and get a nice bull.
Yeah, for sure. Steve, it's been awesome having you on the podcast. I want to give you a second. Any final thoughts, concluding thoughts, any final thing you want to say to me or the listeners? And it's always great having you on. I look forward to seeing the success of you and your hunters and your guides there at Chappell Guide Service, and love watching Elk Camp TV. So appreciate having you on.
Yeah, thanks, Jay, for having me on. It's always a pleasure and always a lot of fun to be here with you. And I thank you to your listeners. Always fun to be a part of their elk hunting, and I want to wish all of them the best of luck. If they're anything like me, and I'm sure you are on the same boat, Jay, this year especially, I'm especially looking forward to getting out there and spending some quality time in the woods and just enjoying that. This has really been a crazy year. I kind of saw a little I think it was on Instagram where the Back to the Future movie, I'm sure a lot of guys remember that. Michael J. Fox and the scientists were there at the DeLorean, and Michael J. Fox was sitting in the driver's seat, and the scientist was telling him, whatever you do, don't push 2020. So this is a year that I don't think many of us want to repeat. So again, this is going to be an extra special, month or two of elk hunting for me. And, I would just wish everyone the same, and just to get out there and enjoy it immensely. And, just don't focus too much on what's going on in the world right now in politics. I know it's hard not to. And again, I hope everything goes goes well and goes right with the election, and we can move on to better things. But again, Jay, great to be on with you, and just a blessing today.
Right on, buddy. Sounds good. God bless. Take care. Tell the girls hello, and I'll be chatting at you down the road here.
That sounds good, Jay. Tell Gene hello. Thanks again.
All right. Bye.